Now gold is not enough.
Hello guys and welcome. This is CheapDishSoap and today we're going to talk about Valorant's patch notes 0.47. I feel like this discussion has been very anticipated since the release of Valorant. I think there's going to be a lot of useful and anticipated information in this patch notes that a lot of you are going to want to hear. So really quick before I get into the patch notes, I want to do a brief discussion on what Valorant essentially is. A lot of people say it is CSGO and Overwatch combined. With that being said, there are a lot of abilities that characters have and they can use to advance themselves in certain scenarios to engage with strategy. Now, with that being said, some of these abilities may seem like they are a little overpowered. Maybe they could use some nerfs. And you know, a lot of people have been talking about Raze and Sage recently on how OP the damage of Raze's grenades and the bazooka is unfair. Now, I don't want to just pick on Raze this whole time, as she is a great character and she has her abilities for a reason, is to kind of get people out of hiding spots and corners that are going to be predictable of where people may be hiding, and that's the idea of Raze. Now, with that being said, I think Sage has a few abilities that need to be nerfed as well. We're talking about the Sage wall more specifically, especially in the beginning rounds of the game. When Sage uses her wall in the beginning rounds, it really puts an advantage on the team that has a Sage that uses the wall efficiently. It is very hard to break through when you only have pistols and knives. So this is one of the biggest discussions that we're going to talk about, along with the B-hopping on ice. Now, with no further ado, let's get into the patch notes. Okay, so we're going to start with the gameplay and balance. Melee damage. Melee attacks now inflict double the damage per hit to destructibles, including Sage's barrier, Haven's metal double doors. Now, why? There weren't enough options during low econ rounds, such as the first round and right after switching sides to combat Sage barrier orb. Our intent is to add a high risk, high reward method for players to interact with her wall while still being able to take it down no matter their loadout. Now, obviously, we discussed this earlier in the video about how they were going to do something with Sage's wall. Now, something I want to kind of briefly mention with this update, it's going to make the earlier rounds easier. However, I think it will make the later rounds a little more difficult because people are going to be able to breach the walls a bit faster with more high tier loadout. So this will be an interesting balance to see. Now, of course, this was just referring to the melee damage for the game balance. Okay, now we're going to talk about Raze. Reducing the paint shells from 2 to 1. Paint shells now have a kill reset requiring players to get 2 kills to refresh cooldown. Now, if you're not too familiar with the paint shells are, that is her grenade. Also tuned and adjusted audio for paint shells, blast pack, and showstopper so that they'll be easier to hear in hectic scenarios. Fixed an edge case where a secondary cluster of paint shells would explode quicker than intended. They now have a minimum duration before exploding. What's up with that? Why? Raze's goal is to be highly threatened duelist that punishes enemies posted in predictable positions, but we felt like the cluster grenade and their numbers were creating overly oppressive scenarios. Also, players should be supplied proper gameplay information and the audio cues on all of Raze's abilities that didn't match their threat. So we have changed the audio of each. For example, when the showstopper is equipped or fired from a distance, players should be able to clearly identify and interpret the threat. Now, with that being said, I never really noticed an issue with the audio. I never noticed it feeling off, but I'm glad that they had adjusted this because there clearly was an issue here. Now, I think they did exactly what needed to be done with Raze. To be honest, her bazooka is not that OP. It's more of a scenario type of situation, and you're very well aware it's going off. When you hear the audio of the character announcing that she's using the ability, you have plenty of time to prepare, hide, and do whatever you need to do to adjust to that scenario. Now, however, one of the biggest things that I complained about Raze was actually her grenade, not necessarily her bazooka. Her grenade is just so OP. It explodes, and then the clusters come out and explode just too quickly. I get the point of trying to eliminate people from hiding in corners, but it's more of like you can't even escape it. The explosion from the clusters is too quick and too powerful. Now, what they have gone ahead and done is they basically made it to where the paint shells are reduced from 2 to 1, which means radius isn't going to be nearly as big, but that's not going to be the biggest difference. What really is going to be the biggest difference here is going to be the fact that the player is going to have to get 2 kills in order to get the refresh cooldown. That's going to be huge because every round it would just refresh and you could buy. Now it's going to have to actually be required for you to get 2 kills. So the player playing the character is actually going to have to be doing something rather than just a reset every round. I think the biggest impact with this nerf is going to be the fact that the second casing of clusters of paints will explode not nearly as quickly as they had before. It's gonna explode, and then the clusters are gonna come out, and it's gonna wait a little bit longer before they explode. So that right there is gonna allow the person hiding in that cubby, in that corner, or predictable scenario to be able to move and escape, which will still make them clearly vulnerable as they are moving and running from a grenade that is damaging them, and you have the angle on them to go ahead and take them out. That is the intention of what Raze's grenade was supposed to do, not to just be so overpowered where it kills everybody. I mean, you couldn't even escape it earlier. I mean, you'd be far away from it and you'd still die wondering how. So now the cluster is going to be a lot more delayed. I believe the damage is going to still be the same, but it's just going to blow up later. So it's going to give you that opportunity window to escape wherever you were hiding from the grenade. Now, as we conclude with Raze, I am personally very happy with what they did. They didn't go too far. They did exactly what was necessary to nerf her. They really didn't make her a character where people were like, oh my God, they nerfed her. I'm never playing her again. They ruined her. It was a very small adjustment, but they did exactly what was needed. And I am very happy with what they did. And I think that it's going to make the game a lot better. Okay. And now as we move on to Sage, what they have changed with her. So slow orb now also slows the airspeed of players in the zone. Now people might be wondering, what does that mean? Slow the airspeed? Why would you need to slow the airspeed? Okay. So what we're talking about earlier in the video, in the very beginning, referring to Sage's slow orb and people b-hopping through it. So as you know, when you walk through the slow orb, it slows you down when you're walking and makes a crackling ice noise. Now, if a good player that knows how to b-hop correctly can actually avoid the slow orb and just b-hop right through it without it slowing them down whatsoever and just bypassing it. Now, that is not obviously the intention. The intention is to slow the character down regardless of what they are doing. So with them making this adjustment, that makes it to where now b-hopping does not work through the slow orb, and it will slow you down just as much. So there's no purpose or point to attempt this any further. Now, since it's saying that it's slowing down the airspeed of the player in the zone, I'm going to only assume that it applies to Jett as well. Now, I'm not 100% sure on this. This is just me kind of assuming due to the fact that Jett is a more air-based character. So we will have to see once this update comes out. Another thing that they have done is also players now walk through the slow orb without making noise. Why though? Players were able to circumvent too much of Sage's slow orb by bunny hopping through the zone. We want the minimum slow amount to be a bit more consistent with all movement in the zone, while still allowing for bunny hopping and walking to provide a slight benefit to traversing the zone. Also, we feel adding a stealthy yet slow way to move through the field brings more nuance to players against the zone, and a bit more uncertainty for Sage since she can't necessarily hear people when they move through it. Now, this was really smart of them to do because a lot of players are going to be fairly upset with the fact that they can't b-hop through the field. Now, b-hopping isn't the easiest thing to do, but you can master it after practicing it for like 30 minutes to an hour in the practice range. What they have gone and done is just made it to where you can no longer hear the enemy moving through the field. So Sage can't pick up on knowledge just by audio. You actually have to have a visual on the field, which could still put Sage at a high risk as if she peeks and the enemy is prepared to shoot. Now, I really like what they have done here, and I've actually been recently playing Sage a lot, so I can more understand why this nerf is there. Now, as a Sage player, when you throw those slow fields down, when you hear players moving in it, you can kind of adjust accordingly to the strategy of your team on what to do. With being super far away, you could just be in a whole different room and you can hear them moving and just kind of give knowledge out to your teammates on how to move and how to rotate and what to do. By them doing this, it makes it a little bit harder. You're going to actually have to get down, get a little closer, get a visual rather than just using the audio and spitting out call outs really quickly to your teammate. Now, wrapping up with Sage, I personally am really happy to see what they did with her. At first, I wasn't too fond of the no audio when people are walking through the slow orb, but after really sitting down and thinking about all the scenarios, I do think that it was a little overpowered, that you could hear people walking it pretty far away. If anything, they could have made it to where the radius of the audio of it, you had to be really close to it. But overall, I think with all of Sage's abilities, I think that she should have to have a visual in order to really know what's going on. So now it's more of a guessing game further away, whether somebody is there, whether your slow orb is actually doing something. There are just a few more updates to go over in this patch. The next section we're going to talk about are the map updates. So there are several exploits fixed on Bind, Haven, and Split. So on Split, the orb is moved from B mid to B main. The intent is to alleviate some pressure from mid and to provide more of an incentive for players to control B main, which does make a lot of sense as obviously B main is where most of the action is going to be placed. So it's more of a high risk, high reward situation. Now, the second to last thing we're going to talk about here is quality of life. So reduced outbound network traffic from players running at high frames per second. Some ISPs and network setups were throttling game traffic, impacting gameplay by causing large spikes in network latency as FPS increased. No impact to gameplay or responsiveness. Now, overall, I really have not experienced any negative connections for myself other than my own internet provider just failing to have a consistent flow of secure internet. The actual servers themselves have always felt fairly balanced for me. Now, I have noticed some players within the games have had high ping, but other than that, I haven't really experienced too much on server side. So that is a good thing, but there obviously were some issues, so I'm glad they went ahead and adjusted those. Now, the final thing to talk about are bug fixes. Fixed a rare server crash caused by packets occasionally being corrupted by some players' networks. Cypher's spy cam can no longer use weapons. Fixed a bug where footsteps audible range would sometimes not appear on the minimap. So with these things being said, to be honest, the only thing that I have actually really been affected by was Cypher's spy cam no longer using weapons. I don't know if you guys were aware or not, but there was a glitch in the game where when Cypher uses his spy cam, if a character, another teammate, gives him a pistol while he's in the spy cam, he can actually use that pistol to shoot players through the spy cam. Now, spy cam obviously is supposed to do what it's named. It's supposed to spy on the enemies, not shoot them. So clearly this was a bug not intended to be in the game. So I'm glad to see that they went ahead and fixed this because people were definitely abusing it. Now, I really should have mentioned this in the very beginning of the video, but we're at the end and I'm going to mention it now. So the patch will be taking place in EU matchmaking down on April 22nd, local time at 3:30 a.m. CEST. Then turning off servers, they'll come back up around 9 a.m. CEST. Also on April 22nd, local time, NA matchmaking will be down at 4:30 a.m. Pacific Standard, then offline at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard, be back up at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard. So this patch hasn't actually yet been implemented at the day of the release of this video, but it will be on April 22nd. So tomorrow, if you're watching this video today, it will be released and patched. Now, you guys got my perspective and my opinion on most of this. I want to know what your guys' perspective and opinion is. Let me know down in the comments what you think about this patch. Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Also, do you think that there should be other characters and abilities that should be nerfed? Give me your opinion and take on the game. What do you think? Do you think it's balanced? Do you think it's unbalanced? Do you think it's a great game overall? Give me your opinion. Now, really quickly, I also want to announce that I'm going to be doing top 10 clips of Valorant. So you guys can send me clips of your high game glitches or maybe funny moments, and you can send them in and I will feature clips. You can send these clips in. I have a Google Doc forms linked in the description and also my About page on YouTube channel where you can submit them clips, and you can also send them to my email address that I have provided below as well. Now, I know a lot of you guys also are streamers. I'm sure you have Twitch clips. You can send me the same way through your email with your Twitch clips as well. And with the people who don't use Google Doc forms, just make sure that you somewhere in the email give me permission to feature your clip, because unfortunately without that I cannot feature your clips. Now, I know there are quite a few people out there still waiting to get access to beta. You guys are always more than welcome to come hang out with us and try and get the key drop in the beta, express your opinions and feelings on the game, and we can just sit and discuss and have a great time. Either way, wish the best of luck for you guys in the gaming experience of Valorant. Hopefully you guys get your keys regardless. And hey, if this video helped you in any way, please feel free to drop a like, subscribe, keep the notification bell on for any future releases of Valorant. And also don't forget about the top 10 clips, guys. I want to get those rolling, really get you guys featured. Thank you guys once again. CheapDishSoap.